Howdy y'all, welcome back to Cam Shack Productions. Today I want to talk about something that I think most overlanders overlook, and that is the payload capacity of our vehicles. I think we as overlanders can learn something from the ultralight camping backpacking community. You know, this is my Nissan Xterra. It's a 2010 second generation, and its overall payload capacity, which includes everything inside the vehicle. That's you, that's everything on the roof rack, that's everything inside. But the payload of this vehicle is 974 pounds to 1,061 pounds. And as overlanders, I think sometimes we bring way too much gear. I mean, if you look at what I have inside of here, my cooler, which is going to come with me regardless of whether I go ultralight or not, but the average cooler weighs between 35 and 75 pounds once we fill it with ice, depending on the size of the cooler. So I figured this one at about 50 pounds. I have my 6-gallon water jug, which weighs 50 pounds. I have my camp bin here, which is anywhere from 35 to 50 pounds, depending on how much fuel I have from my stove that's inside of here. And that is, I'm going to put that at 35 pounds in the weight of this. I have a 10-gallon extra gas can up on top of the rig, and that's 60 pounds. I have my tools and recovery gear also on top of the rig, and that's an additional anywhere from 20 to 40 pounds. For this, I put it at 30. I have a 3-gallon spray bottle that I use as my kitchen sink to clean off things like that, and that is 25 pounds. If I'm going to take my Camp Chef stove, I'm going to take my 5-gallon propane tank, and that's 20 pounds. And if I am going to take my 2-burner, the smaller of the Camp Chef stoves, that is 30 pounds according to their website. I'm also going to take 5 days worth of food for 2 guys, and I'm going to average that out at about 35 pounds. And then we're going to talk about the average tent. Most of the tents you're going to buy at Walmart are going to be between 7 and 25 pounds. The one I have here is about 15, so I put it in at 15 pounds. We have all of our sleeping gear, so anything that you would sleep in, your backpack, and I have that at about 25 pounds for the 2 guys, 25 to 30, but I did total it at 25 pounds here. Plus I have 2 guys in the vehicle, one weighing 225 pounds, the other guy averaging 200 pounds. We have our miscellaneous items like camp tables, camp chairs, wood, saws, axes. I averaged that at about 35 pounds. So with my overlanding gear, myself, everything in there, that puts me at 870 pounds total inside of the vehicle. And you know what? If you're going out for a weekend, you're going out with the family and you're going to be in one place and you're going to drop camp and that's all you're going to do is stay there and enjoy camp. I say load the sucker up, fill it. You know, you're not going to be doing what we call overlanding, right? If you're an overlander, the whole goal is to travel from one place that's difficult overland to the next, to find new camp spots, to find different setups. And I think that's, again, where we as overlanders can learn something very valuable from the ultralight backpacking community. So what if we took our vehicle and we went from something like this to something like this. So I basically took all of my heavy gear and replaced it with either ultralight backpacking gear or smaller, lighter camping gear. Again, I think if we're overlanding, our goal is to be in our vehicle, traveling from place to place. I can't tell you how much more spring the Nissan has in it just from changing this out. But you know, I mean, I think there's some really simple things that we can all do. For example, instead of using a big heavy canvas tent, this is my one Tigris bungalow backpacking / camping tent. This is big enough for me to be inside of. You could fit 2 people, but it would be tight. It's got a nice vestibule, but it weighs about 3.5, 4 pounds max versus my canvas tent that was somewhere in the 15 range. This little teeny Amazon table, you guys have seen me talk about this if you've ever been on the channel. It's little, it's only small enough to set stuff on to cook. which is really what I need to be doing. Again, if I'm going with the family and I'm setting up camp, this is not how I'm gonna go. But we're talking about traveling in our vehicles, being light, being able to go up serious obstacles. This is the way to do it. A small light table instead of a full-size camp chair. They make these that are super duper light. They're expensive. They're very expensive chairs if you get the ultralights, but this thing weighs about half, if not a little bit even more, maybe more like a quarter of the weight of my big long camp chair, and it works great. It's comfortable. It doesn't have a cup holder. It's not high off the ground, but it's really comfortable and it's really small. In my bins. So instead of hauling a tarp like this, a giant thing that you have to fold up and deal with, why not pick up a lightweight backpacking hammock tarp? This thing weighs less than 2 pounds and it's 11 feet by 9 feet. It will easily tie over the top of my rig. And if that's not enough, I also have my ultralight less than a pound hammock tarp that I basically just keep in my day pack most of the time, anytime I'm hiking or something like that. But these two items are way smaller, way lighter. Instead of bringing a giant foam pad or mattress or heavy pad, you can pick up an ultralight. This thing is rated to an R value of 6.5. It's for winter. You can pick this thing up and it weighs less than a pound. I mean, actually it weighs about a pound, but really, really light. You know, ground cloths. Instead of carrying a ton of blankets, I have my thermal reactor sleeping bag liner, which is much, much lighter than bringing huge amounts of blankets. And you know, again, I'm not saying don't do those things, but instead of taking all of the heavy stuff, why not switch it out with some of our lighter, a little bit easier to use stuff? For example, my kitchen is all in this bin. My food is back behind me here. My water is still here. My spray bottle is still here, but all my food is in that bin. All my drinks and everything are in the cooler. But, you know, instead of carrying a big Coleman multi-burner or a Camp Chef, these are 2 stoves. I actually have 3 stoves because in my little other bin there, I have another jet boil. But with a simple adapter, I can make my jet boil into a regular stove. This is my MSR Whisper Light. This is the fuel bottle for the MSR Whisper Light. And I can tell you that if I am burning this thing to make, let's say 3-4 cups or 3-4 pots of coffee a day, this fuel canister will last me for an entire trip, probably more. And instead of carrying around huge propane bottles or a 5-gallon propane tank, I can get a bottle of white gas that will easily sustain me for a month and a half if I was burning this thing 3 times a day for half an hour every single time. And it's really, really light and it's much more compact. I also have a little backpacking stove inside of my other pot that I use. You know, instead of bringing 50 plates, 1 for each of us. Some extra paper plates in case we need to cut or make something. Super light, super easy. This is all just cordage. I got fuel canisters for the jet boil. And between these 2, this would easily last for a 5-day trip. No problem. And it's gonna work great. Knives, forks, a pair of tongs, a spatula, a lighter, and spoons, basically 1 set of silverware for each of us, and the utensils you would need to cook pretty much anything. Coffee cup for me. My buddy's gonna bring his own. I got garbage bags and Ziplocs inside of this. And then this is my pot set. For the 2 of us, and again, I'm not gonna be making super fancy meals, but even if I wanted to, I could with this pot set easily. I can put one on one of the jet boils, I can put it on my other backpacking stove, I can put it on my MSR, I can have 3 burners going at once, and way, way lighter. You know, I'm saying like that huge 20-30 pound stove, I can have all 3 of these burners running for less than 5 pounds. So super easy, super light. And again, I think it's just a change in our mindset. It's us thinking through, you know, instead of carrying around a really heavy bag, can you get a really light bag? And there's also a downside to all of this too. The downside is that when you start to get into ultralight gear, it starts to get really expensive. But if it's going to save your shocks, if it's going to save you money from having to get towed out of someplace because your rig just can't handle what you're doing, then I say it's probably worth it to get the lighter gear. What do you guys think? I don't know. And I mean, you know, when it really comes down to it, this is a cot. Instead of my 20-pound Coleman cot, this thing weighs 6 pounds. And it was only 65 bucks on Amazon, and it's really comfortable, you know? Utilizing ultralight backpacks, ultralight gear will make your system so much lighter, and in my opinion, so much better. Y'all, if you got anything out of this video, please go down, at least hit the like button. If you really want to help out the channel, subscribe. It's the best way for me to keep getting you information and to grow this channel and to share it. But you know, ultimately, y'all, it just comes down to the fact that gear has gotten so good, it has gotten so light. Do we really need to take all of this stuff? You know, do we need to have everything built in? In my mind, again, the whole thing behind overlanding is challenging your driving skills, challenging yourself to see scenery and go places that the average vehicle can't go. So why not take advantage of the fact that you have a really nice vehicle, keep it really nice by using lighter gear, buying newer, more expensive stuff for sure. And yes, it can be so much more expensive, but overall, you know, it's just really a much easier way to get yourself going. You don't need to have all the same stuff. And not only that, but most of this ultralight, at least the ultralight backpacking gear that I've been using, I think personally is more comfortable than most of the stuff that we usually consider comfortable. My sleeping pads are so great. My sleeping bag weighs less than 1.5 pounds and will keep me warm up to 18 degrees with just the bag. I mean, it is so light, it is so comfy, it is so warm, and it is so worth it. So, you know, again, just my opinion. I think that if you have everything tricked out and you want to haul it around, or you've made modifications to your vehicle so that you have a better suspension and you can handle the weight, again, I think it's just us remembering that just because we can fit it in our vehicle doesn't mean it's good for us, and it doesn't mean it's good for overlanding. So, y'all, thank you very much for watching this video. Again, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you all back here next week. All right, be well, my friends. Yeah, I mean, it's so light, it's so nice. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you go with the lighter, nicer gear? Super easy.